Product Manager HQ, where we're interviewing product leaders on different product management topics. Today, I'm very excited to have Adriano Blanaru. Thank you, Adriano, for being with us today.
Happy
We
to be here.
Thank you. We are talking about product management as a system. Adriano is currently head of product for a new venture, leading a 0 to 1 initiative. Early in his career, Adriano worked as a business analyst and went on to do investment banking. He completed his MBA, and during that time, that's when he started different startups, and we'll talk about that later, where he co-founded several startups on different products. And he currently has over 10 years of experience. So we're happy to have you and pick your brain today. For those of you who are joining us live, please feel free to just put any questions in the chat box for Adriano. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. And
Thank
happy
you.
to be here and talk a little more about what I may have learned over the last few years.
So how about we first start with how did you get into product management?
Great. So it was, as you mentioned, I started my career in finance. I was in finance for about 10 years. I was an analyst in capital markets doing different things. Uh, and eventually I realized that I needed to go more entrepreneurial. I didn't see the purpose in what I was doing, and I decided to try my hand, starting my own business. That's when I decided to quit my job in finance, go to business school. And during that time in business school, I started fiddling around with different ideas. And, uh, it was 2008, 2009, 2010. Any business is a tech business or tech enabled business. And that's when I really understood what product management meant in tech, or what it meant to build a digital product. And I understood that the things that drove me to leave my career in finance and then try to start something new, which was like the idea of like, hey, I want to be uh, learning about new problems and solving them and trying to make a business out of it. Trying to make money by solving some specific need. Like, what drove me to entrepreneurship was exactly what seemed like I would find in products. Like, it was the problem solving, is the trying to make it happen kind of stuff, and focus on some of that. So that was really the transition. Like, my first couple forays into trying to start a tech company were what helped me understand what it meant to build a digital product, what it meant to be a product manager in tech, right? And I was like, oh yeah, that is that is the track that I need to go. So that was kind of how the switch happened.
And then what is your current definition of product management since you've entered it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that is a one that I see over and over. Over the years, I've been building tech products for 12 years or so, and there's always this question, what is product management? And then there's I think the famous or infamous definition. Oh, you're like a CEO of your product and all of that. I don't really buy into that definition. I don't think it's accurate at all. Uh, I see product management as a hub functionality, right? You I think that in any tech company where the digital product is the center of, is the core of how they generate revenues, like everything runs to the product. Like, users and finance are connected through the product. Marketing and finance, everything goes through the product. That's where different departments plug in. That's how the consumer get. So the the product management role, in my mind, is sort of a hub functionality, and you need to be able to be a bit of a polyglot. You need to understand all the different departments. You need to be able to speak finance language, marketing language, HR language, depending on the product they're developing. Uh, you need to be able to speak the language of your end user, your customer, whatever the type of product you're um, building. So you end up being like a big connector, right? You're sort of at the hub of something, and you need to be a polyglot. You need to be able to understand your users and help finance understand why you're doing things like this and what users actually mean. Like it's a yeah. I think that more than anything, it's a hub function. You're kind of at the center of lots of things that are going on, and that's kind of a good segue into the topic that we're gonna get to. Is like that's why it's a complex system, right? So
Yeah, and then how did you learn how to communicate or talk each of the different users or people that you work with their language?
that is a great question. I think that more than anything, it goes from curiosity. Like you're being a curious person, you need to be interested in learning about their stuff and what their day to day is like, and you know what the issues they face. I think that's why I usually say that curiosity is definitely one of the key traits for a good PM, because you need to be able to you need to be willing to go and learn, right? So that is the first prerequisite, right? Now the other part to it is that I come from business, right? I am a I actually went to a technical high school. I started engineering. I left to go into business because I'm sort of a business guy, but with with an engineer soul. But uh, uh, I'm always more interested in the application of technology than necessarily the development, the nitty gritty of the development of technology itself. That's kind of why I kind of gravitated towards business. And in the business formation, it's kind of pretty generic. You learn about finance, you learn about marketing, so you start learning, the terms and some of the skills. So that is part of it. So I do have, sort of a diverse academic background, because in business you just learn a whole bunch of different things. Uh, and yeah, I guess the other part of it is just as you start working with people, and you keep reading, and you bump into something you don't understand, and you go and you try to understand it, and you just learn over time. So I think that the, uh, obviously learning to speak all their languages and what they do, like, takes time, but there are many things that you can be doing and learning and get better at all of that over time. It's a long process.
Yeah. And then we'll go back to the product management as a system. Can you
Mhm.
go explain it a little bit further into what you mean versus the opposite of it, or maybe not the opposite of, but what
Like
people enjoy?
what contrasts with that? Yeah, absolutely. I think that when I talk about product management as a system, or as we talked about, as product management as system management, maybe, right? I don't know what the best term is. What I mean by that is really uh, kind of having the awareness and the willingness to explore this as a complex system, as something that is highly interconnected with other things, and systems and subsystems, and basically uh, try be okay with dealing with the general complexity that exists around it, right? I think that the contrast to that is oversimplification, is kind of just looking at something and say, all right, there's like a quick and dirty rule here, we can follow this, boom, done is better than not. In some cases maybe, right, but not always. And I think that uh, simplification is great, oversimplification is dangerous. So even when you simplify things, you need to be careful and try to understand how that connects with the whole system. So I guess trying to be a little more clear on what I'm trying to say is, uh, whenever you're just looking at a single KPI, and that's the one thing that matters, and you don't really care about how that KPI is interconnected with other ones, and how it evolves in the future, because maybe you have a very specific goal that your mandate for the quarter is to increase this KPI by. If you just simplify it and just go after, you're just running the risk of making a whole bunch of uninformed decisions or bad decisions because you're exchanging short term for long term or vice versa. Uh, so I think that what I'm trying to say with this is that yes, product management is complicated because you are at the center of a complex system, right? And trying to oversimplify and trying to take too many shortcuts, to make things more expedited, uh, generally tends to backfire. So I guess my point is, that honor the complexity that exists there and be honest about it.
Some another question just to build on that. For those who are like me starting out in product management, what advice would you say towards being able to implement product management in the systems way of thinking?
Uh, that is a great question, and I don't necessarily have like a fully fleshed out kind of guide on it, or and I think it depends on your background as well, where you're coming from, how kind of the context that you bring into it. But generally speaking, uh, I would say that first and foremost, uh, understand that product management is uh, it's not simple, right? It is not straightforward, right? You're dealing with a lot of complexities. So first and foremost, know what you're getting yourself into, right? Uh, Second, I think that uh, generally speaking, dealing in systems, uh, it becomes about being able to map and model the system, right? And when it comes to that, I think having understanding different mental models, different frameworks, and understanding different tools in general that are available to you as a product manager. And by tools, I mean from concepts that thought leaders in the space came up with, and kind of now they're well known in the space. So stuff like that. Even tools really like software. Little pieces of other products that can help you in some other way. And there is really a lot of content out there. A lot of it is repeated, right? There's a whole lot of the same thing being said in slightly different ways. But I think that there is no better advice, I guess, than gather information. You have to gather all the information because to be able to notice something, you need to have seen that before. You need to know. You need to start seeing. It's like, hey, if you have a map, in a situation like this, use this method. In a situation like this, use this method. In a situation like that, use that method. Even if that was absolutely, if you find a situation like this method is sure to give you the answer. The question becomes how to recognize in which of the situations you are. That is not clear either. So you need to, for the most part, uh, read and study and capture information and be hungry for new knowledge because that's really, in my mind, the way to be able to start understanding the complexity involved in things.
Yeah. Um, can you give us an example from your experience where, maybe you use that method in terms of like try to use a tool and it didn't work, and then that whole concept of
Mm. So It's I don't know that I have a specific example here, but I do think that it is a lot of the trial and error process that you use in product anyways, which is you know, coming up with a hypothesis, like understanding, trying to understand a situation, coming up with a hypothesis to explain that, and then figuring out how to test it that is true or not. You know, it's a little bit of the trying to use the scientific method in general, right? So uh, let me try to come up with an example here. Uh, you know, you've done you're working for a company and you're managing a product that has been doing things kind of the same way, and you're trying to come up with ways to increase conversion on new traffic acquired, for example, right? And you just keep using the same models and the same math, and they say, oh, let me try this button here, let me try to change the color, and you do a lot of A/B testing. Well, maybe the way you're modeling that is not the best way, and it's not letting you understand what what is really affecting the system. You're basically playing around with some variables that don't really move the system much, right? So in a situation like that, you I think that at that point you start with a bit of an investigation, like, okay, let me try to understand this a bit better. You know, we've been trying this way, and it doesn't seem to move the needle. What else could be happening here? Where else is traffic coming from? You know, how people are going. So you start investigating. You start coming up with hypotheses and trying to, okay, so if I change something there, so it is a bit of a you know, exploratory endeavor, and as you're going through it, you're probably studying and trying to find new solutions, and in the process, you learn and you learn, you learn, and that is also why the you know, I think the career of a, you know, the typical product manager goes the way it goes, right? In the early days, you're more executing stuff, so you need to be a little more, uh, you know, you get with day to day. You're not necessarily thinking of things that are extremely strategic for the company or for the product. And then as you get more senior, once you saw all the patterns and basically you gather the experience, which in my mind, uh, uh, experience is nothing more than, you know, gathering different tools and the understanding of when to deploy each one of those, right? Uh, as you gather more experience, that then you start getting into more strategic stuff, and get more into the product, really product strategy, which is very different than the day to day of management. It changes quite a bit over time.
Yeah, how about, okay, my next question would be like product management. You're doing product management for a new venture, 0 to 1. That type of system design or system versus something for a current product. How would you, I guess, describe the difference between the two in terms of the.
Yeah, I think that is a great question, because first of all, in in a product that's running at scale, right? You have a lot of context, potentially, hopefully, a lot of data, a lot of history. So you're already at that point. You should already be able to have mapped the system in general. And by mapping the system, I mean kind of really understanding what are the actors, what are the forces, you know, what influences the results of what you're trying to accomplish, and I'll talk a little more about that in a little bit. But uh, so you have a lot of information, you have a lot to deal with, and you have that history, and it tends to be a little more exploratory in this kind of trial and error, like hypothesis, let's test. So you can do that in a more disciplined way, and I think that if you manage to manage that product in a disciplined way, where you're constantly coming up with new hypotheses on how to improve this or why something's happening, and you can test and just you know constantly doing that. I think that you're going to be good, right? When you're managing something that already has some momentum. When you start something zero from that's Wild West. That's like I don't even know exactly what the problem is, right? I don't even know if other people understand the problem the way I understand the problem. So it is, it had been a while since I had started something from zero like this, and it was kind of daunting because you have really nothing to start from, right? And so it's a lot of open field, like not definitely not enough data, lots of information out there that you can gather from researching the market, but hard to necessarily synthesize that into something useful. So uh, from zero to one, I think initially there's a lot of full like green field, thinking. But then the key there is that, okay, once you start to get to some definition into what that's going to look like, and into kind of what is your thesis about the problem and your solution, and that kind of stuff. Once you start to form that, then you have to start translating that into, okay, so how I transform that into hypothesis that I can go then build and test, because otherwise you're just gonna keep going, right? So there's less initial context for you to start and come up with your hypothesis. So that initial part is a bit, uh, it's hard to structure, honestly. At least that's how I felt this last time around. But once you have that the backbone of what this thing is going to be, of what the product is going to be, then you need to start going back to the discipline approach and say, okay, now let's have a cogent, thinking here. Like, this is our first hypothesis. This is how we're going to test. This is what we're trying to figure out. And this is how we're going to go from there. You cannot just keep in that full on exploration mode forever, because not you may get to something, but it tends not to be something compelling as a product. It tends to be kind of a collection of.
Yeah. I don't know. This might be a hard question to ask. But how do you know when to stop the exploration phase in this 0 to 1 initiative, and then to move with a more structured approach?
Uh, Great question, and it wasn't that hard to figure that
Oh,
out. Yes, that was a great question, and I wondered that for a good time, and then eventually that became very clear. And just to give you a little more of the background there. So what we're building is a smart assistant. Like, long story short, is smart assistant. Basically, we're building a productivity tool that's there to just be your sidekick and help you with gathering and retrieving information and completing day-to-day stuff for you. uh, Still not public, but just so you guys can understand a bit better. Now, uh, when we start, like, there's so many approaches this can take. There's so much going on in the productivity industry. There's so many people trying this or the exact same thing, but with that different flavor or with that other different flavor. There's so many, right? And uh, the concepts that we were exploring is like what we're trying to do, and how that, when it would start mocking up, and then how that would look like, and what the interactions would look like, and up until this point we're still talking about like very like black and white kind of low fidelity mock-ups, right? And eventually in those explorations, we got to a design that, like a general model for this thing, that I started thinking through the use cases, and I'm like, hey, yeah, we can handle that use case with this. This seems to work. All the little, all the other ideas that we had, like it will break here, it will break there, it will break there, but this concept here seems to make sense. So uh, at that point, up until then, I was like, I'm not, we had started playing around some concepts, but I was not in a rush to start building anything because I didn't really know what we needed to build. At that point, I was like, crap, I want to build this ASAP because I want to put it in people's hands and see if it works. So, uh, uh, when it comes to the initial exploration for the backbone of the product, it was actually a very easy thing. It's like we started not knowing what it was for like 6 months, and one day it was like, crap, I think this concept here could work. And from then on, it became like, I just want to build. I just want to build and start doing the rest of the development. Then start uh, trying to get clarity about all the other smaller pieces that we could not see from that initial point. So.
Yeah, nice. I guess it just comes out of nowhere. So stop worrying and just continue to be in flow and working as you go when you're doing these 0 to 1 initiatives. I just want to take a break and encourage people who are viewing us live, if you have any questions. We do have one question that came. How did you find product as your calling after 10 years as an analyst executive in capital market?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in the beginning, right? But uh, it was basically, I'll try to tell like in a short way. After 10 years in finance and thinking that that would be my career forever, I started feeling like there was something missing, and it was kind of, I didn't know why I was doing that. So I did my soul searching, trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my life, and the building stuff and solving problems. That's kind of what landed me in. Okay, I need to go start my own thing, and starting my own thing was already sort of in tech. Led me to understand what it means to build a tech product, and how to kind of tease out the needs of the users, and how to solve that need, that kind of stuff, and that I thought it was incredibly entertaining. So that's when I made a switch. But just summarizing a long story.
And then I guess one last question, or maybe we have more time for more. What in your opinion is the most critical part of product management?
uh, Thinking. you know, uh, as I said, I think a product manager is at a hub, right? Is a hub functionality. You're talking to every, and so basically you are getting a lot of information, whether you want it or not. People are just coming to you, giving you information about what they like or don't like. So I think that having the ability to distill this and transform, then okay, so what does it mean? How do I turn that into action? What does it mean in terms of priority? So I think it's a lot about being analytical, kind of parsing the information that you have, be it like data, be it subjective information, parsing it out and making decisions. So it is thinking, but I think more specifically is decision making. I think the most important part of product management is decision making. Like it's coming up with solid decision making skills and being analytical and rational about that. I think that's what tends to lead to long term success in product management.
And the last question will be, what is your advice to any newcomer product managers?
Uh, First, be ready to learn forever, nonstop. Otherwise, otherwise you're not going to be doing product management because you have to keep learning about your customer and about it, and be ready to be humble. I think that success in product management, uh, it is a lot about managing, the people, the stakeholders around you, and you need to be able to work well with everyone, right? You need to be sort of the the lubricant in the system there. So you need to be humble, and you need to be okay with, successes are from the team, all the failures are yours, and yeah. Yeah, got to develop a thick skin.
That's a hard lesson to learn. I think that comes with experience too.
Hmm.
One more question from the audience. For a fellow professional, 10 years in career and feeling the same sense of missing, how would you suggest going about discovering if product is for that person, or if it is, how to pivot? Do an MBA, master's in science, computer science? What's your
That
advice?
that that's a good question. Uh, I let me start with the degree first. That's the easiest part to. I don't have a computer science degree, right? So I cannot speak much about that. I do feel like, uh, if you're too much of a computer scientist, if you're too technical, you're probably not going to be a great product manager. But you're probably happier coding. But anyways, I think that uh, an MBA nowadays is a decent option. When I did it, it wasn't. Back in the day, and back in the day, like 10 years ago, it's not that far back. People still saw, what are these MBAs going here? Like, you don't know how to code. You were never a designer. Then get your business degree and shove it. It was not easy to break into the space. I think nowadays, uh, I see not only MBAs with uh, uh, you know product focused programs, and there's a whole bunch of internship, all of that. So I think that MBA is uh, a viable option there, if that's something that you're interested in. In terms of figuring out if that's your calling, that is a harder one that I have trouble thinking about how to do that without how to figure that out without doing it, right? But I guess, uh, if you think about your interests, right, and it's like, hey, do I prefer to, just solve a problem in a room by myself and not worry about people, or do I prefer to talk to people? Do I like to talk to people or not? Okay, if you don't like to talk to people, you cannot be a product manager. If you only like talking to people, you can also probably not be a product manager. You need to have, the thing about going out and talking to people, but you also need to be able to sit down with your spreadsheets, and distill that stuff. So uh, I think that probably the best way to understand if it's for you or not without doing it is really thinking about those skills, those things that are going to be flexed really hard in product, right? And see if you're if that interests you or not. Uh, but yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer to the question, but
Do we have time for one more question? I just want to add
yeah,
a question to that. What are the skills that people need to flex?
yeah, I think that uh, that is fairly easy to see the list. It's basically all skills. You need to be able to communicate well. You need to be good with data. You need to, have a good sense of design. You need to have a decent sense of strategy. You need to learn a little bit. So as I said, like, you have to be a bit of a generalist, even if you're coming from a more of a specialist world. You need to be able to, open up and learn a whole bunch about all the things. But I would say, uh, definitely communication skills, because you're going to be communicating left and right. You talking to customers, talking to your company, writing a lot for, definitions and documentation and all that. So you need to communicate well. You need to be analytical, and by analytical I mean, kind of being okay with data. You don't have to be like a statistician, but you need to be okay with data, need to be able to understand what the data is saying. And more important than anything, what it may look like the data is saying, but it's not actually saying. That is where it gets dangerous. So, uh, uh, yeah, I would say like being, very analytical, communicating well, being, learning to take negative feedback all the time. All your genius ideas are probably not genius, and you're gonna realize them soon. So, uh, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I appreciate you going a little bit over time. And there is
Absolutely.
one more question, but I want to open that up if that's okay. Can people private message you on LinkedIn for any other
Yeah,
questions?
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
feel free to reach out to Adriano. There is a special link on where you can reach him and LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
And thank you so much for your time. I want to respect it. I know we went over a little bit. So
No
thank
worries.
you. Appreciate you taking the time to come out and chat with us, learn so much, and hope to have you again soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Happy to come back.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for
Cheers.
watching. Stay tuned for more. Bye.
Bye bye.